Welcome back, everybody. We are about to embark on the final panel of the third annual virtual TSM conference, Redefining Recovery. I'm Jenny Williamson, Executive Director of the C3 Foundation, and I am so glad you've joined us this weekend. This conference is available to view and participate in for free, thanks to our two co-headline sponsors, RIA Health and Work It Health, and our panel sponsor, Alcure. If you'd like to support the work of the C3 Foundation, there's a donation link in our profile and a timer that'll drop the donation link into the chat during the broadcast. If you're on Twitter, please feel free to live tweet our conference with the hashtags Redefining Recovery and Options Save Lives. Our next presentation comes from Katie Lain, who will speak about accelerating your TSM journey. Katie Lain's personal success with the Sinclair Method has inspired her to be a lifelong advocate for this method. She serves as a TSM coach and mentor, guiding others through the process of breaking free from the cycles of alcohol use disorder so that they can live a happier, healthier, and more fulfilling life. TSM is an extremely powerful method for permanently changing drinking habits. And Katie has found that her clients have the greatest success when the method is combined using a whole person approach that includes the psychological, behavioral, and spiritual components that are necessary to truly change our relationships with alcohol for good. Katie is also the co-founder of Thrive Alcohol Recovery, where they offer a private online program specifically for TSM. The program is designed to help people accelerate their TSM journey all the way to extinction and beyond. So, Katie, welcome to the conference.
So honored to be here with you. Thank you, Jenny, for everything you guys are doing to put this conference together.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and hide my video now so you can bring up your slides. And then I'll rejoin you afterward for a Q&A.
Awesome. Sounds good.
All right. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Jenny. Hey, everybody. I am so honored to be here with you guys today. For those who don't know me, my name is Katie Lain. As Jenny shared, I'm the co-founder at Thrive Alcohol Recovery, where we offer a comprehensive program that guides people through the Sinclair Method. So in today's talk, I'm going to cover 5 keys to accelerating your Sinclair Method journey. The 5 things I'm going to cover are really what I have learned through my own personal experience on the Sinclair Method and also serving as a coach as well to people since 2018. And so the first key that I'm going to cover is your why. Really, why is it that you're even doing the Sinclair Method? Number 2 is your mindset. How are you thinking about your drinking and the Sinclair Method? Number 3, your beliefs. What are your pre-existing beliefs about alcohol, about yourself, about recovery in general, and about the Sinclair Method? Number 4, your daily actions. What are you doing daily to guide your success on the Sinclair Method? And number 5, your future vision, meaning what are you excited about in the future when you have your ideal relationship with alcohol? So let's start with number 1, your why. So with this aspect of getting on the Sinclair Method, when you can define your why, it's really just going through all of the reasons why you even want to go on the Sinclair Method to begin with. When you define your why, it can really help you to have a vision for your future and really become the person that you really do want to become. When you don't define your why, it can be difficult to stay motivated throughout your Sinclair Method journey. Like with anything in life, if we don't have a reason why we're doing something, our motivation can come and go. And I find that, sometimes people get going on this method and they might understand, on the surface level why they want to drink less, maybe for their health or because their spouse wants them to, but to really take time to dig deep and get to the root of really why you want to make these changes and define your why and all of your reasons why. Many people have multiple reasons why. It can really help you to stay committed and see success with the Sinclair Method. So there are four primary categories of why motivators that I wanted to cover in this talk. And I think when we can categorize our why into these four different categories, it can help us see, really what are the primary areas that are driving us to make this change. So the first is a success-based motivator. So that could be something like, I want to perform better at work. So when you have a success-based motivation as part of your why, it's like a future version of yourself that is successful and that you're really looking forward to. Then there's fear-based motivators, like my liver enzymes are high and it's putting my health at risk. And for me, I remember one of my fear-based motivators was right before I got started on the Sinclair Method, I almost got a DUI, and I never had such a close call before. And so that experience just really, for lack of a better word, it was a very sobering experience. And so it really invoked like a healthy fear in me to really get this issue fixed because I was facing real life consequences with it. There's internal motivators, like I want to have more energy for my kids, or really anything inside you that you really want deep down and that over drinking is really getting in the way of. And then there's external motivators, like, my spouse says they'll leave me if I don't get this under control, or my boss wants me to quit drinking. And so these are really, the four primary categories of motivators for why anyone makes a change. And I think it's important to categorize these because, for instance, if someone has primarily external motivators, so if they're going on the Sinclair Method because their loved one wants them to, or their boss, then it's really going to be hard for them to stay committed to it long term because all of their motivation is coming from outside of them. And so it's really important to really dissect and understand our different motivators and whether or not they're coming from within. Most people will have a good balance of all of these different, success-based, fear-based, and internal and external motivators to make this change. So when your why is defined, it can really help you stay motivated on this process because you're working towards something in the future. It can also get you excited about your future despite your current circumstances. For a lot of us, it's like when we get going on the Sinclair Method, where we want to be is so far in the future that it's like we're nowhere near that. But when you have your why defined, it really helps you to begin to visualize that future version of yourself when you have your ideal relationship with alcohol. And we'll talk more about that in just a bit as well. When you have your why defined, you have a list of reasons to refer back to when things get hard or when your motivation fades. For me, it was really helpful to just keep a running list of all of the reasons why I wanted to make this change. And it was something I kind of started doing spontaneously, but I would just add to it over time. And the list became so long. And whenever I was feeling, tempted to not comply or, to, not have an alcohol-free day when I'd already planned to, I would just revisit that list and remind myself over and over again why I was doing this. And it would help me to be motivated in those times where maybe my motivation was lacking. So when your why is not defined, what happens is your future goals that you have for yourself, whether it's the short-term or long-term goals, they're fuzzy. And so there's nothing really to aim at. And what happens is we're kind of going about our day-to-day life and not really aiming toward, a person or a type of person we want to be in the future. And so, for me, when I struggled with alcohol for nearly a decade, I was really living for my next drink. I wasn't really thinking about my future goals and what I wanted for myself because I was just thinking about, am I going to drink tonight? And when am I going to drink? And how much am I going to drink? So, when we don't have our future goals defined, there's nothing really for us to aim at. And so we can kind of just be existing in the day-to-day experience of the Sinclair Method. When your why is not defined, you also don't have a foundation to ground into, again, in the sometimes mundane day-to-day of doing TSM. What happens for people, sometimes they get started on the Sinclair Method, they see early results, they're super excited, but then reality kicks in and they realize there's more to it than just taking a pill. There's got to be habit and lifestyle changes. And so they might, stop taking the medication or just not be fully engaged in the process. And so when you have all of your reasons why defined, it's something that you can really ground into to help yourself stay committed through this process. It can also make it easier not to comply or do the work necessary to make habit or lifestyle changes when we don't have our why defined. Again, if we don't know why we're doing anything, it's going to be hard to keep committed to the process because, as most of you know, this is a long-term protocol, so we really need to have a strong foundation built so that we can stick with it through the good times and the hard times. So I just wanted to share some question prompts to help you define your why. And these are things you can do as thought exercises or you can write them down. But I really think it's important to spend time doing this kind of inner inquiry and self-inquiry so that you can get to the root reasons of why you want to make this change. So number one, what would my life look like in 3 years from now if I didn't make this change? Number two, what would my life look like in 3 years from now if I did make this change? What dreams did I have for myself as when I was a child or adolescent? I think oftentimes when we struggle with alcohol use disorder, we have maybe these dreams or visions that we kind of put to the back burner, thinking, oh, those are long gone, they're not possible anymore. But what I found with myself and what I see with clients as well is we can kind of resurrect these dreams, if you will, and get really excited about our future when we don't have, these chains on us with the experience of alcohol use disorder. So another question is, what's something I've always wanted to do that I've never done because of excessive drinking? For me, just a silly example, ever since YouTube was a thing, I always wanted to have a YouTube channel. I have no idea why. It was just something I always wanted. But, when I was experiencing alcohol use disorder for nearly a decade, I was always either drinking or hungover and never had the mental clarity of, enough to like start a YouTube channel. I didn't even know what it would be about. But as I got going on the Sinclair Method and started to see it working, I was just inspired to start this YouTube channel. And, most of you know, like my channel has grown and I love doing it. It's become a real passion of mine. And I really attribute it, honestly, as like a passion that developed and helped me really heal from alcohol use disorder because I had something to look forward to. But again, this was something that I always wanted to do, but I never did because of excessive drinking. And so just to ask yourself, like, what things have you been putting off that you've wanted to do? And then how is excessive drinking causing harm to me and my life? And then what benefits do I get from excessive drinking? So just doing that cost benefit analysis, there are going to be benefits that we're getting from it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it. But oftentimes what I find with people is when they do this honest analysis, they'll find that the costs of drinking far outweigh any benefits that they get. And that just helps to kind of shift our perspective slightly and let us look at our drinking and our relationship with alcohol for really what it is. Okay, so number two, I wanted to talk about your mindset. So I love this quote by James Allen where he says, man's mind may be likened to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. So why I love this quote is because it really implies that we have the power within us to intelligently cultivate our mind. But if we're not doing that, it can truly run wild and run amok on its own. And in my experience, when I was drinking a lot, it was very hard for me to have a positive and forward-focused mindset because, again, I was so focused on drinking. And when we overdrink, it just clouds our mind and our thinking and our emotions and all of that. And so as we get going on the Sinclair Method, recognizing that we have the power to cultivate our mind is such an exciting place to be in. It gives us back our power over alcohol and over our life. So a mindset is a set of beliefs or a way of thinking that determines your behavior, your outlook, and your mental attitude. And so this graph here really depicts the different aspects that encompass one's mindset. So we all have beliefs from our past. Those beliefs that we have lead to the thoughts that we're thinking and ultimately leading to our actions and our results. And so really becoming aware of the mindset that we have as we approach the Sinclair Method is such an important thing to do because it's going to get to the root cause of the beliefs that we have and the thoughts, which are ultimately driving our actions and our results. Mindset is important because it's really the only thing that will determine your success or your failure. And that's because the thoughts that we focus on really do influence our behavior and our actions. As you saw in the previous chart, what we're thinking is going to come in our actions, and then that's going to ultimately be our results that we're seeing. More than anything, you really need to believe that change is possible for you on the Sinclair Method. Sometimes people come to this method feeling quite discouraged because maybe they've tried Alcoholics Anonymous or rehab or just quitting drinking on their own or moderating drinking on their own, and it hasn't worked. And so they might come to it believing like, well, I don't even know if this is going to work for me. But I just really encourage you to really understand, are you being your own biggest cheerleader? Because if we're not doing that, even if we're doing all of the things on the outside, like if we're, trying to change our habits or, do the right thing with the things we're doing each day, those things are important. But if we're not starting with the right frame of mind and the right mindset, we're kind of going to be spinning our wheels a little bit. And so as it says here, all the time, skill, knowledge, and hard work in the world won't get you anywhere if you don't really believe that you can change. So I wanted to illustrate a mindset with this psychological concept that's pretty well known of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And I think this just helps to illustrate, really simply the kind of two different mindsets that can exist out there, and understanding that, a fixed mindset is something that people can have without even really being aware of it. I know it was true for me. I've seen it true for my clients as well. So what is a fixed mindset? A fixed mindset essentially believes that, the talents that you have, your intelligence, your skills, and the circumstances in your life are all fixed. They're permanent and they're not changeable. So a common fixed mindset that you all can probably relate to that comes to mind for me is the mindset of I'm an alcoholic. I know for me, even when I was struggling at the worst with my alcohol use disorder, I never identified as an alcoholic because that just felt like such a heavy stigmatizing label that I really did not want to place on myself. And so that is one example of a fixed mindset where someone believes, well, I'm an alcoholic. This is my destiny. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm kind of stuck in this place forever. And, I know that that label does help some people. So not to knock it. If it helps you to call yourself an alcoholic, then by all means. But for me, that never felt like something I could identify with. And in fact, it kind of deterred me from getting help with my alcohol problems because I didn't want to put that label on myself. And then conversely, a growth mindset believes that your talents, your intelligence, your skills, and your circumstances can be improved upon and changed. And so if it's not already obvious, it's much more beneficial to have a growth mindset in both life and with the Sinclair Method. So let's talk more about that. I wanted to give you some examples that I've seen, like real examples of fixed mindset versus growth mindset on the Sinclair Method. So first of all, a fixed mindset could be someone who comes to this method thinking, I need my wine, my beer, my cocktail, my drink of choice in order to unwind and relax in the evening. So that is a very fixed, rigid mindset. And then the growth version of that would be, I'm going to brainstorm a list of new ideas of how to unwind in the evening. Now, it might feel a little inauthentic to go from someone who really believes I need this in order to relax to someone who all of a sudden is saying, I'm going to brainstorm a list of ideas. This is a process. It's not like an overnight change necessarily, but for people to even be aware of these fixed mindset and these fixed beliefs they have that are really keeping them stuck in their progress on the Sinclair Method. So another one I commonly see is, I need alcohol in order to socialize. So the growth version of that is, I'm open to the idea of socializing without alcohol. And then I can't imagine having an alcohol-free day. I hear that one a lot from people. Becomes I know I can have an alcohol-free day in the future. So even if today you're drinking every day and you really can't imagine yourself having that alcohol-free day, there's a part of you that knows that in the future it's possible. And so when you can shift into a growth mindset and being honest with yourself, like I haven't had an alcohol-free day yet, but I know it's possible in the future, it's going to help you have that future focus. And that really opens up the door to possibilities of the change you're going to make in the future. So how can you cultivate a growth mindset? So the first thing is that it really starts with your thought habits, watching your thoughts and really practicing reframing negative ones. As I mentioned earlier, so often, changing habits is like one of the biggest challenges I think people have on the Sinclair Method. We get going on the medication, it's removing our craving, but here we are still drinking more than we want simply because we're drinking out of habit. And so oftentimes people want to know how to change their habits, and we have these strategies that work for people. You switch up your favorite drink of choice, you move your drink in another room, you're doing all of these different things to change your habits. But it's important to realize that any habit change really first starts in the mind. So again, if you're going about your day thinking like, I can't imagine having an alcohol-free day, that's going to play out into your actions and your results on the Sinclair Method. So changing any habit really needs to start in your thinking and your mindset. and how you are approaching the Sinclair Method. Another way to cultivate a growth mindset is to focus on and celebrate your small wins. In our program, we are always encouraging people to recognize the small wins that they're having, because something I often say is the greatest form of motivation is progress, meaning the greatest way to get motivation in yourself is to see yourself make progress. So sometimes on the Sinclair Method, people can have these small achievements and they'll just blow them off and think it's a placebo effect or it's no big deal. But it's so important to really highlight and recognize and celebrate the small wins that you're having, even if it seems insignificant. That's really how you're going to be excited about this process and help you to build up your motivation as well. Try to view mistakes as learning opportunities. I remember, when I got started on this method, I was so much in the habit of thinking or beating myself up for mistakes that I would make, if I overdrank or if I was hungover or if I wanted to have an alcohol-free day and I didn't. It was so easy, and I was in this thought habit of just constantly beating myself up. So it took effort to really reframe my mind. But what happened over time is I started to view these mistakes as learning opportunities, because if I drank too much, the night before, it'd be like, okay, I took my naltrexone, but I still drank too much. Why did that happen? And I could think back and I could almost always pinpoint at least one reason why it happened. And so that mistake then became a really valuable learning experience for me. And then I could take into my next extinction session. So viewing your mistakes as learning opportunities is a big one. Instead of praising results, praise your effort. If you're not where you want to be, but you're putting forth effort every day, you're logging your drinks, you're being compliant, just pat yourself on the back for that progress. And then also just to be curious. Sometimes we can approach this method with a really rigid mindset, or again, be in the habit of beating ourselves up. But if we can approach this whole process of changing our relationship with alcohol with a curious mindset, it can just make it more fun and playful and more lighthearted. Okay, so the third thing I wanted to address are your beliefs. So beliefs are the assumptions that we hold to be true. Beliefs stem from real life experiences in our past, and our beliefs really shape our identity and our life. So it's important to become aware of and question your beliefs in order to really understand the beliefs that you have that are either helping you or harming you. This chart over here on the side really illustrates how beliefs really play into our whole mindset and our whole experience. So, oftentimes we have beliefs that are deeply ingrained in us, whether we're aware of them or not. But the beliefs that we have lead to the thoughts that we're going to have, which ultimately lead to our actions and our results. And so it's important for us to become aware of the beliefs we're having, because sometimes we can be carrying around beliefs that are things we're not even aware of, but they're really going to be shaping our day-to-day habits and behaviors and what we are doing. And so wanted to break the beliefs down into two different categories of rational beliefs and irrational beliefs. And I think this is just a really simple way to kind of categorize our beliefs and kind of look at them more deeply to understand if they're beliefs that we have that are serving us or harming us. So rational beliefs that we have are true beliefs. They're realistic and there's evidence to support them. Rational beliefs make sense, so they are logical. Rational beliefs are helpful. When you have a rational belief and you act on it, it's going to get you where you want to go in the long run. And I'll be giving some examples in the next slide of real life rational beliefs versus irrational beliefs. So irrational beliefs are just the opposite. They're not true, they're unrealistic, and there's no evidence to support them. Irrational beliefs don't make sense, so they're not logical. And then finally, they're harmful. So if you have an irrational belief and you act on it, it's not going to get you where you want to go in the future. So just some examples of some irrational beliefs that I commonly see with the Sinclair Method. So the first one is, I need alcohol to relax. Alcohol makes things more fun. I can't imagine life without drinking. I need alcohol to cope in life. I don't like who I am without alcohol. And I can't let go of hard alcohol. So on the surface, these might seem like, what's the big deal? Yeah, I do need alcohol to relax, but I think it's really important for us to become aware of these maybe subtle beliefs that we're kind of carrying around that, unbeknownst to us, they could really be shaping the thoughts that we're having, which again is leading into our actions and ultimately our results. So again, when someone's on the Sinclair Method and they're stuck drinking out of habit or drinking for coping reasons or other things like that, oftentimes I find it's because they're carrying around these beliefs that are not really serving the person that they want to become. And we'll talk more about how to shift irrational beliefs in just a second as well. And I just want to say, it can take time to adapt new beliefs, and it can feel kind of authentic, or inauthentic if you really feel today, like, I need alcohol to relax, like I really do. You're not going to all of a sudden be like, oh, I guess I don't need it to relax. But the important thing is the first step is to really know that it's possible to change your beliefs, and you have that power to change your beliefs. And it really comes with practice. So some rational beliefs could be things like, I don't need alcohol to relax. There's actually lots of other ways to relax. Alcohol in excess doesn't make things more fun. It actually causes a lot of problems in my life. And I can imagine life without or with less alcohol, and there would be lots of benefits to it. So again, it can take time to kind of shift from an irrational belief to a rational one, but just recognizing the first step is, knowing that it's possible to do. So how do you cultivate a rational belief? So in order to cultivate a rational belief, you really need to start to build evidence to support them. So let's use that example of I don't need alcohol to relax. There's lots of other ways to relax. So let's assume you've been believing I need alcohol to relax, and you want to shift your belief to this one that, hey, I don't need alcohol to relax. I know there's a lot of other ways to relax. So, one thing you could do is just to brainstorm all the ways to relax without alcohol. And again, writing a list is very effective, because if we're just thinking about it in our mind, it doesn't really cement it into our reality. So putting it on paper is a really good exercise to do. And sometimes if you've been relying on alcohol to relax for years or decades, you're like, I don't even know what to do. That's what I was like, I don't even know how to relax without alcohol. That's like my go-to coping tool. And so even just thinking about it from an objective perspective of like, what would this person do to relax? Or what do people who don't have alcohol use disorder do to relax? And just creating a list of all of these different ideas. And then putting them into practice so that you have lived experience with them. And really, the truth is you have to practice being who you want to become. So we can do this in really small ways too. It's not like we need to totally uproot our daily habits and, make all these changes. We can do it in really small ways. And in fact, one of the things I often recommend for people to do is like, if you're someone who's not having an alcohol-free day yet, and you want to work toward that, it's like, okay, how can you interrupt your current drinking routine? I'm not saying don't drink. I'm saying, what can you do before? Like if you're someone who turns to alcohol to relax, what can you start doing before? Can you have a cup of tea? Can you go for a walk? Can you take a bath? Telling yourself, I'm gonna drink after this, but first I'm gonna do this. And really, consistency is key with this. If we do these bite-sized things, but do them consistently, we will start to change over time. Our brains, they do change when we're consistent with things and we're proactive about trying out new things. It will change our habits over time. But the consistency really is key. If you try twice to have a tea before you drink and think, oh, screw it, this isn't working, it's not going to get you very far. You've got to keep trying and keep practicing being who you want to become. So, as I said earlier, it's such an empowering realization to realize you have a choice in what you believe, and you can dispute any irrational belief you have. A really simple way to do that is by turning it into a question and then answering it. And your answer will probably be a rational belief. So, for example, I need alcohol to relax becomes, do I need alcohol to relax? Or I can't let go of hard alcohol becomes, can I let go of hard alcohol? And if we ask ourselves these questions and we're really honest with ourselves, we can start to, again, open that door to what's possible in the future. Even if today you really still feel like you need alcohol to relax, just by asking yourself, do I need that to relax? Again, I mentioned curiosity earlier. It brings a whole curious mindset to this whole process. And that is where we can really make any change and start to open up our imagination to what's possible. What are other ways to relax, as opposed to having that rigid belief of just, I need alcohol to relax. So the more we question and become curious about our beliefs, the more we can shift them to align with the person that we really want to become. So here's just some question prompts that you may use for getting curious about your beliefs about alcohol. So In what way do I identify with alcohol? I'm a wine lover, or I love to drink. And again, these are things we can just throw around out there, no big deal. But it's really important to recognize that these are the things that are really driving our behavior. So if you're still telling yourself, I love to drink, that might be true, but is that really going to serve you toward getting to that ideal relationship with alcohol? Like, how can you shift that belief so that, we take alcohol off of its pedestal and you gain your power back over it? When we experience alcohol use disorder, so often our identity is so wrapped up in it because it's been a part of our life for years or decades. And so just to really question, like, how am I identifying with alcohol? Another question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is alcohol in my life right now? And then asking yourself, how important do I want it to be in the future on a scale of 1 to 10? And this can just be a, simple mindset shift of like, maybe I'm ranking it an 8 right now and I want it to be a 3. A lot of people who come on the Sinclair Method, their goal is to be indifferent to alcohol. And that is true freedom if you can just take it or leave it. And so if it's super important right now and you can gauge how important you want it to be in the future, that can just, again, be a little mindset and perspective shift. What does alcohol add to my life, and what does it take away from my life? What beliefs do I have about alcohol, and are they rational or irrational? I think just spending time doing this inner inquiry, becoming curious, asking yourself these questions, this is where a lot of change can really happen with the Sinclair Method, especially if you're struggling and you're stuck in habits. It's just, how can you start to do this inner work and this mindset work to really shift your beliefs, which ultimately shift your thoughts and your actions and your results? So let's talk about daily action. So I love this quote by Jeff Olson. He wrote the book, The Slight Edge, which I just think it's a fantastic book. I recommend it to everyone. He says, the truth is what you do matters. What you do today matters. What you do every day matters. Successful people just do the things that seem to make no difference in the act of doing them, and they do them over and over and over until the compound effect kicks in. Let me read that part again. Successful people just do the things that seem to make no difference in the act of doing them, and they do them over and over again until the compound effect kicks in. So success on the Sinclair Method is really a result of those tiny decisions you make each and every day. Things like, should I take my naltrexone today or not? Should I exercise before I drink tonight or not? Should I go for an alcohol-free day today or not? In the moment, these are the decisions that really seem insignificant, but as he says in his quote, Jeff Olson, these are the tiny decisions that we make each day that really add up to the progress we're making or the decline that we're seeing. Again, it's really, it's not going to make a big difference if you, don't have an alcohol-free day today. There's no going to be major change in your life for better or for worse. Nothing major is going to happen. But if you every day keep putting off that alcohol-free day or keep putting off changing the habit of exercising, these are the things that either add up to success over time or they add up to failure. Remember, it's the things that are really easy to do, but they're also really easy not to do. And that's the danger zone. This is a chart from Atomic Habits by James Clear, and he kind of adapts this in his own way, where he illustrates if someone is 1% better every day over the course of a year, they're going to be 37 times better by the course of a year. So those 1% tiny improvements just add up to these big gains over time. And again, these are the things that are really easy to do, and the danger zone is that they're easy not to do. And so if we're just 1% worse every day, those little things, again, in the moment, they're not making a difference, but over time, they're going to add up, and a year is going to go by so quick, and you're going to wonder, why am I not where I want to be? And it really comes down to this philosophy, which Jeff Olson talks about in The Slight Edge. And it's just how are you viewing those 1% things each day that you can be doing that are really easy to do, but they're really easy not to do? So this is another chart from James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits. And in our program and when working with people, we often recommend that they start micro goals toward habit change and do them with consistently, 1 to 3 small goals each week that you can focus on that you are pretty confident that you can achieve, but they're going to stretch you a little bit. Because as it's illustrated over here, sometimes people set really lofty goals when their motivation is super high in the beginning and they're like, I'm going to have a week alcohol free when they're starting the Sinclair Method, and so maybe they'll be able to do it. But what about next week when their motivation wanes? And so when we set goals that are too high, we can't really adapt consistency, and we really need consistency in order to change habits. And so we recommend, and what works best, and if you read any habit change book, this is kind of the same philosophy they will recommend, is setting these really easy goals that you can do consistently, again, for that 1% improvement each and every day. Okay, now we're going to talk about your future vision. Okay, so vision is a picture of the future that we have that produces passion in us. I really want to encourage you to not underestimate the power of getting excited about your future. And as I said earlier, you really have to practice being who you want to become. And so if we go into the Sinclair Method and we don't have a clear vision of the future that we want for ourselves, and we have our ideal relationship with alcohol, again, we can just kind of get stuck in the mundane day to day and lose sight of where we're going and the progress that we want to make. And so, if we're faced with the decision, oh, should I have an alcohol-free day today or not? If we don't have a vision that we're excited about in the future, it's going to be really easy to default to our patterns of drinking. And so it's really important that, we have a vision of our future that we can really get excited about. I always tell this to people, it doesn't matter how long you've been drinking or how old you are. If you still have a pulse, you still have a purpose. So sometimes people, they might feel, oh, I'm retired. I don't have anything to look forward to in life. My kids are moved out. But no, that's not true at all. If you still have a pulse, you have a purpose, and I know you do deep down have something inside of you that you are excited about, that perhaps with your drinking you have put to the back burner because maybe you thought it wasn't possible. But I invite you and encourage you to just get excited about your future and start visioning the type of future you want to have for yourself. A caution, something I want to put out there for people is that when we're stuck in the trap of alcohol use disorder for years or decades, it can really strip away our excitement about the future. For me, I was living for my drink every day. I was kind of getting a job that would allow me to drink how I wanted and not really thinking about my future, just kind of thinking about my next drink, to be honest. And so, as I looked back on that, as I got free from drinking through the Sinclair Method, I really realized that alcohol was taking away my genuine joy and excitement for life. And so I want you to be aware of that. If you're still drinking heavily on the Sinclair Method, recognize how, if you're not feeling enthused or excited about your future, that's not you, that's really the alcohol talking. And so you've got to kind of push through and become aware of that. Too much alcohol can really diminish your ability to really dream and get excited about the future. And it can also strip away at your confidence and your ability to try new things. When we're trying new things, it does require a certain level of vulnerability and being willing to make mistakes and not be the best at it. And alcohol can just really, rob us of our confidence and our ability to do that. So really to take a step back and see alcohol for what it is. If you're struggling to get excited about your future, again, it's not you, it's the alcohol talking. So how can you do things to get excited about your future? This is a great quote. I read a lot of Brené Brown when I was on the Sinclair Method. Her books and material helped me a lot to heal, but she says this quote that always stuck with me, where it says, "We cannot selectively numb emotions. When we numb the painful emotions, we also numb the positive emotions." And so many of us, use alcohol as a coping tool and a numbing agent, and it's very effective in the moment for sure. But we have to recognize that when we're numbing, our stress or our trauma or whatever we have going on, we're also numbing the positive emotions. And one of the most powerful things I realized as I was, breaking free from alcohol use disorder through the Sinclair Method was that over drinking completely robbed me of my joy, my genuine joy and appreciation of the simple things in life. And I always tell this story, but I used to make cocktails and go on a walk at nighttime after work. That was my thing. So I was always buzzed and drinking on these walks that I would do in nature. And as I was going on the Sinclair Method and I was drinking less, I started doing these walks without alcohol and being sober. And I remember I walked by this flower and I'd walked by this plant probably hundreds of times, and I just never noticed it before because I was so desensitized to my environment because of alcohol. And I saw the flower and I realized, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful and it smells so good. And I actually ended up crying because I was like, I've never appreciated this before, because alcohol was just numbing me from my surroundings. And so just to be aware that, when we're numbing the negative emotions, we're also numbing the positive ones. And that can be a really vicious cycle and a trap that we get stuck in when we have alcohol use disorder. So how can you create a vision for yourself? Using your imagination to dream about the future that deep down you want it and that you are capable of. I love to create vision boards and just like get pictures of snapshots of myself or the future I want for myself, just so I can have a picture in my mind. Set long-term goals that you can get excited about. And spend time in reflection, asking yourself thoughtful questions about, where you want to be in your future and revisiting those things that you really wanted to do as a child or as an adolescent before you had alcohol use disorder. So just some question prompts, to get clear on your future vision of like, what does my life look like when I have my ideal relationship with alcohol? How will I feel? How will I look? How will I act? What will I do? And what will I be contributing to the world? And what will my loved ones say about me? I remember for me, I had like a lot of different pictures in my mind of, what life would look like when I had my ideal relationship with alcohol. And a really simple, silly one was I had this clear picture of me sitting at a coffee shop at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, like visiting with a friend. And that to me just represented that I wasn't hungover on a Saturday, because for nearly 10 years, every Saturday at 9 o'clock, I'd be hungover in bed. So it represented that I wasn't hungover and I felt well enough to be out with friends. I felt healthy to be at a coffee shop on a Saturday morning. So that was just like one of many different pictures I would have in my mind and revisit in order to get me excited about this future version of myself when I had my ideal relationship with alcohol. Another question is, what are the top 5 things that you value most in life? And oftentimes when we do this exercise, we'll find that alcohol is not on that list. And that can just be a powerful perspective shift to realize, for me, I was spending so much time thinking about drinking and recovering from drinking and all of that. And, it wasn't even one of the things I valued. So it was just very, sobering to realize that alcohol wasn't on the list of my values. And so just a perspective shift. Oh, and I guess that's all. So thank you guys so much for having me on today. Thank you so much, Jenny. And just to recap today, we talked about your why. Why is it that you're doing the Sinclair Method? Your mindset. How are you thinking about your drinking and the Sinclair Method? Your beliefs that you have. What are your pre-existing beliefs about alcohol, yourself, recovery, and the Sinclair Method? Number 4, your daily actions. What are you doing daily to guide your success? Remember, it's those tiny things you do every day that have compound effects over time. And then number 5, your future vision. What are you excited about in the future? So thank you guys so much for having me. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you. Let me go ahead and add myself back to the Zoom here.
Awesome.
Okay, there we are. All right. You had a very large audience completely enraptured. And there are lots of thanks, but I don't see any questions coming up. But there's definitely great feedback in there that everybody enjoyed listening to your presentation. One thing that I want to just touch on, because several other people have mentioned reframing, and it was something that was very important that you talked about as well. And I thought that it would be great to just maybe wrap things up, because the conference theme is redefining recovery. In a sense, we're reframing what recovery means as individuals and in the context of the Sinclair Method. Yeah. So can you just talk a little bit more about what does reframing really look like, in case someone's not really certain what does that mean?
Yeah. And do you mean like reframing our relationship with alcohol or our recovery journey, or which
reframing
aspect of
in general?
In general. I mean, I think, for me, what's kind of been on my mind a lot with regards to like what does it mean? Like, what's the difference between someone who reaches extinction and is totally free from alcohol problems, whether they're sober or whether they're still drinking, versus someone who's really struggling? And I think a big thing of that, like if we're just looking at the 5,000-foot view, is really redefining our relationship with alcohol at its core, meaning we are no longer turning to it. We're no longer viewing it as a coping tool. We're no longer identifying as someone who, oh, I need alcohol after a stressful day, or I need alcohol to socialize. All of those things I was talking about earlier. It's like we're very identified with alcohol when we have alcohol use disorder. And so we really have to break free from that and shift how we're viewing alcohol as a tool in our life, because for a lot of us it's a coping tool that we've just leaned on and used as a crutch, for whatever comes up in life. And when we really change our relationship with alcohol at its core, we're putting out alcohol in its rightful place. We're taking it off of its pedestal. So we're no longer seeing it as this thing I need in order to get by in life, but we're seeing it as like, an accessory over here that, yeah, I'll enjoy you on so special occasions, but I don't need you. And that is really something that happens over time when we teach ourselves new coping tools and teach ourselves new habits. And there is a mourning process that comes with it. And I think that's what hangs a lot of people up, because I know for me, alcohol was like my best friend. And I loved, even though it was very destructive, I loved to drink a bottle or two of wine by myself home alone. It was like this comfort blanket I had for so long. And so I remember being like halfway through my TSM journey and realizing like, oh shoot, like I can't use alcohol in that same way anymore. Like that doesn't mean I have to quit drinking, but I can't rely on it after a stressful day. Like I can, but I really want to break out of this cycle of, not being in control of my alcohol. So I think ultimately it's like this process of reframing how we view alcohol, taking it off of its pedestal and allowing ourselves to truly become empowered over it. And that takes time, that takes perseverance, that takes trying new things. But if we're proactive about it and we're consistent with it, over time, we will really change our relationship with alcohol. But it's going to be uncomfortable. There's going to be a mourning process. But I think, the beautiful thing about the Sinclair Method is we don't have to quit drinking. We can keep alcohol in our life, but that's also kind of the risk too of like, are we going to keep alcohol in our life and still use it in an unhealthy way? Or are we going to keep it in our life and really use it in a way where, it's like we might go out for a piece of cake, but we're not going to have 12 pieces of cake, or we're not going to eat a, carton of ice cream when we're sad. Although like, I think I still do that stuff, but it's this process of really changing our relationship with alcohol at its core and changing how we identify with it, changing how we think about it, changing our beliefs about it. Yeah. And it's a process. And I think that inner work, like when I see people struggle with TSM, it's like the inner work really needs to be, a priority throughout this whole process. Taking the pill is the first step and it's a crucial foundation, but, we have to really like redefine our relationship with alcohol.
And if you think about just in a singular event type of mindset, if you need to reframe something, for someone who may not understand what the process of reframing in general might be, like what would be something that someone would use to step through that? So maybe it's going out and having a spike in drinking the night before, and the initial reaction is, oh God, I failed. What did I do? And the panic that sets in. For instance, what's an example of reframing that thought process?
Yeah. One thing I'm really big on, and I mentioned it in the presentation too, is just training ourselves to view those mistakes as learning opportunities. Like I remember for me, I was in autopilot of just like, oh, you failed. Like, what were you thinking? We're so easily, we go into that mindset. And so recognizing that that's probably our automatic response, and then starting with just interrupting that thought in our mind. So, the next day, if you drank too much and you're like starting to beat yourself up, just stopping those thoughts, catching those thoughts when they're coming in and starting to redirect them. And this is going to take practice, of course, but the power is, like the quote earlier, you can cultivate your mindset. You have the power to stop those thoughts. And so beginning by interrupting those thoughts and then reframing it to think, okay, yeah, I drank too much last night, but like, why did that happen? And having that curiosity around okay, playing the night out in my head. For example, for me, I would overdrink in social situations. I'd be doing great on TSM at home by myself, but out socially, I would overdrink. And typically it was because I wasn't eating beforehand, or I was just caught up in the moment, not mindfully drinking. I was maybe drinking faster. There was like all of these reasons I could come up with of why I overdrank. And then you can take that nugget of information and use it the next time and say, okay, well, next time I'm in that event, I could overdrink if I did this and this and this. So I'm going to set myself up for success and try not to do that next time. So for me, it's like the mistakes are the things we remember the most. Those good days we have, they kind of add up and we're like, yeah, that's great. But when we make mistakes, it's really a memorable experience. And so if we can just, recognize that the automatic thought's going to come automatically, but you have the power to interrupt it and redirect it and think, okay, yes, I made a mistake, but how can I learn from it? And then taking what you learned into your next extinction session.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this third annual conference, and happy Global Sinclair Method Awareness Day.
Yes.
And
thank you.
I don't see any questions in the chat, so we're going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you to everybody who attended this weekend. This has been wonderful. We'll have all of the videos up for replay, hopefully by the end of the week. And, we're thrilled that you guys have been here. We hope that you have found it educational, that you have found it inspiring, and that you take something away that not only you can learn from, but that you can also share with others. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jenny. Great work. Thank you, everyone.